Hello, this is Anjana and welcome to the 7th session on Ruby on Rails. In the previous session, we added some basic validations to the new product and edit product operations. In this session, we will continue to work with validations and see more flavors that Rails provides us with. Earlier, we had added a length constraint option to the name and description fields. And we had specified a minimum of a few characters that each of them should contain. Let us look at other possible length constraint options. They are maximum, in, is. The minimum attribute, what we had used earlier, specifies a length that the attribute cannot be less than. The maximum will specify a value that the attribute should not be more than. Similarly, in or within, the attribute length must be included in a given interval. The value for this option must be a range. So here the password length of character should be between 6 and 20. The is attribute is used to specify an exact number of characters that the attribute value should contain. So here the registration number should be within 6 characters. Now for the price, we had used the numericality helper, like so. So let's see the other options that you could use with numericality. They are greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. We had seen the only integer option that only accepts integer values. So you can have greater than, and if you specify a value for that, the value let's say we've specified it for games played, numericality greater than 20 means the games played should have a value greater than 20, just as the name suggests. Similarly, you can use greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Now, odd and even will accept Boolean values. So if you specify odd true for games played, then the games played value should be an odd number. And if it's even true, then the games played value should be an even number. Now let's look at a uniqueness constraint. Let's say our name attribute should have a unique value. Then you would define the uniqueness constraint like this. And since it accepts a Boolean value, you would specify true. So let's open our Rails console and try creating a name that is not unique. So since we've defined validations for 3 attributes already, we would have to define all 3 of them. So it's easier to find a product. So let's say we would find a product with ID 1 and use that product for our testing purposes. So let's update the name value to let's define the second product. Since we already know the name of the first product is casserole, let's find a product by name casserole and see whether there are any other products that come back. Actually, there's only one product with casserole. So let's find a product with ID maybe 10 and see if it exists. There is no product with ID 10. So let's maybe try 13, and there is a product with ID 13. So let's update the second product's name to casserole, same name as the first product. And there is a rollback because of the error, because of the validation constraint that we just added. So let's check the error messages, and it says name has already been taken. So that is how the uniqueness constraint works. So if you reset the value of or if you put another name for it, like say maybe a large tray, it works. Now let's look at the scope option that goes with the uniqueness operator. For this, let's add another attribute called code. So we would want this attribute to represent a product uniquely, as opposed to name alone, such that no two names can have the same code and vice versa. Currently, we had defined a uniqueness constraint for name. So now let's modify it such that the name should be unique only with a code. So two or more products with the same name can coexist in the database, although their code should be unique. Similarly, two or more products with the same code can coexist with different names. So this could happen in situations where similar products having different colors, which can be represented by the code attribute. So let me modify the uniqueness constraint here and define scope, and the name is unique in the scope of the code attribute. So we would have to define or we would have to add a unique constraint to the name code pair. So for this we would need to add a code attribute to the product resource, and in order to add this new attribute which is persistible, we would need to think about adding a table column as well. For this, we would need to first generate a migration to add a column. Migrations are a convenient way to alter your database schema over time in a consistent and easy way. So let's generate a migration for this. Rails generate migration, add code to products, and let's specify the code as a string. So this will generate a migration file for you. A nice little DSL script that will add the column code to the products table. So let's run the migration. So it creates the column for us. And now let's open the Rails console and try creating two products with the same name but different code, and two products with two different names and the same code. So let's define a product 1, which is, we knew that there exists a product with ID 1, and that is casserole. And a product 2, which is product find 13, which is large tray. So let's define product 2 update code. Let's set it to LT for large tray, and it committed the transaction. For product 1, let's set the code to LT, and it should still work because the product names are different. Now this time I'm going to set the product 2, I'm going to set the name of the product to instead of large tray, I'm going to set it to casserole, which is the same name as product 1, and there is a rollback because the names cannot be the same when the codes are the same. So let's see the error messages. Errors.full messages, and it says name has already been taken. So I'll leave so update did not work. Now I'm going to try the other way around, where the name will be the same but the code will be different. So let me the code as reset the product 1 update code. Let me update the code for product 1 to be CSS for casserole, and this time I'm going to update the name of product to casserole. Now the code is different, so this should work. And now the names of product 1 and product 2 are the same, but the codes are different. So now if I try setting the code for product 2 to be CSS, which is the same code as product 1, it will not work. And the error messages are very obvious. The name has already been taken. That is because it is taking the same default error message that is for the first constraint, which is the uniqueness constraint for name. So that was the default error message that was generated by Rails, because we have not specified any custom error messages. And since we have defined the constraint for name, the name attribute comes up in the error message and not the code. Now let's use an inclusion constraint. Let's say that we have a size attribute for the product resource, and the size can be either small, medium, or large, and no other value other than these three. In that situation, we would use the inclusion constraint, and you would define it like this. And this is for the size attribute, so we would define inclusion and the inclusion helper as an option in that receives the set of values that will be accepted. So you can define in and define an array of values that will be accepted. So small, medium, large. Now the in option has an alias called within that you can use for the same purpose if you'd like to. Now I would also like to define a message option that will specify, or it will show the value that was not one of the values that are specified as the error message. So let's give this a try and let's see the error message printing out. Before this, we would need to add the size attribute to the product table, and for that let's generate a migration. So let's generate a migration for adding the size. The size is a string. So let me change the command prompt, the command that I had used to generate a migration earlier, and let me open it just to make sure that the migration looks good before running it. Okay, I didn't type the right parameters. Okay, so we have add column size to the products table, and the migration DSL looks good. So let me open the command prompt and run a rake-db migrate to run the migration so that it creates the column for us. Now let me open the Rails console environment to try this out. So now we have an extra column called size, and let me define a product 1, which is the first product 1. I can either do product find one or product first. It's the same. Now let me try. So here you see the size is nil. So let me try creating a updating the product, the size attribute of product, to something other than the values that we have specified. And let's see, I thought I had defined, product 1. Okay, so let me do this for product 1. And there is a rollback, so let's see the error messages. Messages. Again, I define products, so, and it says that particular value is not a value size. So let me update it with one of the values that was specified, and it worked. So if you look at product, if you inspect product 1 attributes, you'll see that the size small was updated. Now let's look at some more common validation options that we can use along with these validation constraints, like allow nil, allow blank, on, etc. So let's give allow nil a try. Let's make the price, or maybe the size, allow nil to be true. So this means that we can provide a nil value for size, so it's not, its presence is not required. So let me reload the Rails environment, and again let's define product 1, which is the first product, and size already has a value small. So this time I'm going to update the size to an empty string, and there is a rollback, because you can, if you're not giving any value, then you will have to give nil. Otherwise you'll have to give one of the values within the inclusion option. So an empty string is neither of them, so it gives a rollback. Now let me give nil. So this time it worked. So that is how the allow nil works. Now instead of this, if I were to use allow blank, blank will allow either an empty string or a nil value. So let me reload the environment and define product first as product 1, and this time let me give an empty string, and let's see what happens. It commits it, because this time it accepts nil and empty string, and will not accept any other value other than small, medium, large. So this time it accepts 5 values: nil, empty string, small, medium, large, and nothing else. Now there's another option that Rails provides us, that where you can specify when the validation should happen, and that is an on option. So let's say that we can add that to the size option itself. So if you provide on create, then this validation will kick in only on create and not on update or delete or any other operation, active record operation. So let's give this a try now. Let's reload the environment, and let's define a product first. Let's define a size. So this time let's give a value that's neither nil, empty, or any of the values that are specified. So let me give something, some garbage characters, ASDF, and let's see what happens. So this worked because the validation did not kick in. So the validation did not kick in because this was an update operation, not a create operation, because I've specified here that this validation should work only on create. So let's create a product. By specifying the name. this time maybe we can comment out the name, description and price, just so that we can create a product and we can just test out the size on option. So I will not be giving name or any other value, so I would only be giving size, and this time I will be giving a value like before, ASDF, and let's see what happens. So this time it did not work. The ASDF did not get updated, and that is because the validation kicked in on create, as I had specified an on create option. Let's see the error message. But unfortunately I did not assign this to a variable, so let me assign this to a variable pro, and then let's see the error message for pro. Or maybe I didn't reload the environment. Yeah, there you go. So it says size ASDF is not a value size, which means that this validation kicked in on create. Next, let's move on to conditional validations. Sometimes it will make sense to validate an object only when a given predicate is satisfied. You can do that by using the if and unless options, which can take a symbol, a string, a proc, or an array. You may use the if option when you want to specify when the validation should happen. And if you want to specify when the validation should not happen, then you may use the unless option. For instance, we would like to validate the presence of a card number for an order if the user selected payment type field as card. So let's try creating order model for that, and we can create an attribute card number so that we can try this option. So let's first generate the model order. Let's uncomment all of this and go back to the command prompt and exit out of the Rails console, and Rails generate model order. And after that, let's generate a migration for order. Add, since this already created migration for creating the orders table, we are good for creating the table. So we just have to think about adding think about how to add a column to the orders table. So let's add payment or card number and payment type to orders table. So let's define card number as a numeric and payment type as a string. Now let's open the it's not refreshed yet, so let's try again and open the payment card number and payment type. So here it created this DSL for adding the card number and payment type add columns to the orders table. Now let's run the migration. So it ran the migration for creating the orders table and also for creating the two columns, card number and payment type. Now let's open the order model that was created when we generated the migration for creating a model, and let's add this validation to test out the conditional validation. So let's have a validates for a card number, and we should have a presence true. Now here I would like to confirm the presence of a card number if the user has selected paid with card. So let me define an if condition here, and then define a paid with card boolean. Now let me define the paid with card method. Paid with card, and so the method will check if the payment type is card. The payment type specified is card. So this will return a boolean true or false, and based on that it will validate the card number. So if paid with card returns true, then it will validate the card number, and if it returns false, it will not. So let's try this out again in the Rails console. And here, since there are no orders at all, we would need to create a new order. And let's assign this a variable, and maybe we can define a create, and our payment type can be defined as card this time. So card, if the payment type is card, let's try saving this, and there is a rollback. Oh, I'm sorry, I had not defined the question mark correctly. So let me reload the environment and recreate it. And there is a rollback because the paid with card was invoked, and when paid with card checked, the payment type was card, and therefore it required the presence of the card number, which was not defined. So let me define the card number this time. And let's say the card number was, since it's a numeric, and this worked. So this is how conditional validations work, and instead of if, you can use unless depending on a particular situation. So with this, our 7th session comes to an end. Summarizing the topics covered in this tutorial, we learned some more ActiveRecord validations, including the helpers uniqueness, scope, inclusion, and some conditional validators. Now it is time for a small trivia. How would you validate an attribute of an object to confirm that it should not have an empty string or null value? 2. How would you configure validations to happen for an attribute of an object only at a time the object is getting destroyed? Thank you for watching, and bye for now.